The moment I knew my relationship was over wasn't when he dumped me. It was when he smiled. We were standing in the middle of his apartment. My project, really. 6 months of my life layered into the walls, the floors, the fixtures. The place smelled faintly of fresh paint and new wood. The last thing I'd installed, the custom shelving I'd stayed up past midnight finishing, was still spotless. He ran his hand across the countertop, slow, appreciative. Then he looked at me with that smile. Not sad, not guilty, calculated. Thanks, he said lightly. You really boosted the value. For a split second, my brain didn't process the words. My chest tightened, like the air had been pulled out of the room. My heart was still beating in that steady, trusting rhythm it had learned around him. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, I think we should break up. No shouting, no tears, no explanation that made sense. Just that. 6 months, $47,000. Every night after my own job, every weekend. My hands still rough from sanding, my shoulders aching from hauling cabinets up 3 flights of stairs. I had paid for everything. Materials, labor, permits. I told myself it was an investment in us, a future. He told me he was focusing on himself. I nodded. I even smiled back. Because sometimes shock looks like politeness. I walked out, sat in my car, and let my hands shake against the steering wheel. My breath came shallow, fast. That was the moment it clicked. Not slowly, but all at once, like a switch snapping into place. I hadn't been a girlfriend. I'd been a contractor, a free one. He waited until the last cabinet was hung, until the floors gleamed, until the bathroom looked like something from a design magazine. Then he thanked me for the value boost and cut me loose. That night, I didn't cry. I made phone calls. Because here's the thing about building something with your own money and your own hands. If you're smart, you document everything. And by the next morning, while he was out at brunch with his friends, still sharing his location like nothing had changed, I was standing outside that apartment again. Not as his girlfriend. As the woman who owned every single thing inside. And I was there to take it back. I met him a 1.5 years earlier at a friend's small housewarming party. Nothing flashy. Cheap wine and mismatched glasses. People sitting on the floor because there weren't enough chairs yet. He stood out because he didn't try to. Quiet confidence. Easy smile. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke. He told me he was a freelance graphic designer, bouncing between contracts, trying to build something of his own. I told him about my work, commercial construction management, long hours, tight deadlines, problem solving for a living. He joked that I built things for people who didn't know how. We clicked fast. Too fast, probably. Within weeks, he was staying over. Within a couple of months, we had toothbrushes in each other's bathrooms. We talked about the future casually at first. Vacations, cities we liked, how nice it would be to eventually live together somewhere that felt like home. Around month 4, he started complaining about his apartment. At first, it was small things. The peeling linoleum in the kitchen. The avocado green appliances that looked like they'd survived several decades out of pure spite. The bathroom. Dim, cracked tiles. Fixtures that never quite felt clean no matter how much you scrubbed. I hate having people over, he said one night, wrinkling his nose. It's embarrassing. I told him it had character. I meant it. Then came the landlord conversation. He mentioned, almost casually, that his landlord had said if the place were improved, the rent would drop by $200 a month. Permanently. That should have been my second red flag. The first had come earlier, sharper. During an argument about money, he'd laughed and said, You're kind of broke, though, compared to me. I brushed it off, told myself he was stressed, told myself love meant patience. So when I offered to help, just a little paint at first, it felt natural, logical. I knew how to do this. I liked doing this. Paint turned into patching walls. Patchwork turned into, wouldn't it be amazing if the kitchen actually worked? The bathroom came next. It's gross, he said. I can't even invite friends over. Each time, he'd look at me with that hopeful expression. Each time, I told myself we were building something together. I paid for everything. Every receipt, every permit, every late-night hardware store run. He paid nothing, always saying he was saving for his business and would totally pay me back eventually. And online, he loved it. Photos of the renovation, videos of the new counters, captions filled with heart emojis. My amazing girlfriend made my dreams come true. People commented, congratulated him, told him how lucky he was. I believed them. 6 months of nights and weekends disappeared into that apartment. I custom-built cabinets in my workshop, installed quartz countertops, new appliances, designer backsplash. In the bathroom, I ripped everything out. New toilet, vanity, rainfall shower, even a small tub. Engineered hardwood floors throughout. Lighting, custom shelving. Details no one else would notice, but I would. Because I thought it meant something. We talked about moving in together, about us after the renovation was done. He held my hand while I worked, kissed my cheek, told me I was incredible. And I believed him. I didn't realize then that I wasn't his partner. I was his upgrade plan. The first real warning didn't arrive loudly. It slipped in quietly, dressed as gratitude. A couple of weeks before everything ended, I finished the custom wine rack I'd built by hand. Solid wood, precision cuts, something I'd normally charge a client a small fortune for. I installed it late at night, wiped it down, and stepped back. The apartment looked unreal. Not nice, not better. Unreal. Like a before and after slide from a renovation show. I remember standing there, dust in my hair, arms sore, feeling that deep, tired satisfaction that comes from finishing something difficult. He walked through slowly the next morning, fingertips grazing surfaces, eyes scanning like an appraiser's. "This place," he said. "Wow." He paused at the kitchen island, ran his hand over the quartz. Then he smiled. "This really boosted the value, huh?" Something in my stomach tightened. Not enough to stop me, but enough to register. "Yeah," I said carefully. "It turned out incredible." He nodded, like he was filing that thought away. After that, things shifted. Subtly. He started talking less about us and more about the apartment, less about the future and more about how lucky his landlord was going to be, how smart he had been to wait. He'd invite friends over now, people I'd never met. They'd walk around impressed, complimenting him. "This is insane," one of them said. "How did you afford all this?" He laughed. "Timing and good decisions." I was standing right there. Another night, I mentioned gently that we should probably talk about reimbursement, or at least put something in writing. Not because I didn't trust him, but because $47,000 isn't pocket change. He waved it off. "Why are you making it weird? We're together." That word, together, felt heavier than it should have. I noticed he never used "we" when talking about the renovation online anymore. It was always my apartment, my place, my upgrade. When I joked about it, he smiled. "You're overthinking." I wasn't. I started replaying moments I'd ignored. The way he'd corrected people when they assumed I lived there, the way he'd stopped talking about moving in together, the way he never once asked how much the next phase would cost, just assumed I'd handle it. The biggest warning came the night before I finished. I was exhausted, sitting on the floor, back against the new cabinets, breathing through the ache in my shoulders. He sat across from me, scrolling on his phone. "Once this is done," I said, "everything kind of changes, right?" He didn't look up. "What do you mean?" "Us," I said, "next steps." He shrugged. "Let's not put pressure on it." Pressure. 6 months of my time, my money, my labor, and suddenly, pressure was the problem. I went home that night uneasy, restless. My instincts, sharp from years of managing contracts and people, were whispering something was off. But love is loud, louder than instincts. So I finished. I installed the last piece, cleaned up, packed my tools, smiled when he walked in and admired the space like a finished product. And the next day, he sat me down, used all the soft words people use when they're about to do something cruel, and thanked me for the value boost. That smirk didn't come out of nowhere. It had been growing for weeks. He chose his moment carefully. The apartment was spotless, too spotless. No tools out, no dust, no evidence of the 6 months I'd poured into every corner. It looked finished, complete, like something ready to be handed off. He waited until I admired it one last time. I remember standing near the kitchen island, fingers resting on the edge, feeling that familiar pride settle in my chest. The quiet kind, the kind you earn. I thought, this is what building a future feels like. He cleared his throat. "We need to talk." Every woman knows that tone. Soft, controlled, already decided. My stomach dropped, but I sat anyway. He perched on the stool across from me, legs crossed, expression carefully neutral, like he'd rehearsed this in the mirror. "It's not you," he started. Of course it wasn't. I need to focus on myself," he said. "I'm not ready for something serious." The words didn't land right. They slid off me, disconnected from reality. "Serious?" I repeated. We just talked about moving in together. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I know, but things change. I watched his face. No guilt, no hesitation. Just mild discomfort, like this conversation was an inconvenience. Is there someone else? I asked. No, he said too fast. Then smiled, like that fixed it. I just think we want different things. My heart started pounding, not dramatically, not loudly, just fast, unsteady. I stood up before I realized I was doing it. Okay, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. I hope you figure out what you want. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of watching me break. Hey, he called after me. I stopped, hand on the doorknob. Thanks for everything, he said, glancing around the apartment. The place looks incredible. I turned back. That's when I saw it. The smirk. Not apologetic, not sad, pleased. Thanks for the value boost. Something inside me went very still. There it was. The truth. Clean. Undeniable. 6 months of effort reduced to a line item. A return on investment. I smiled back. Slow. Controlled. You're welcome. I walked out without another word. In my truck, my hands shook so hard I had to sit there for a while before I could even turn the key. My chest felt tight, breath shallow. I stared at the steering wheel, replaying the smirk again and again. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt used. And once that realization settled, heartbreak had nowhere to land. I pulled out my phone, scrolled. Screenshots, receipts, photos, permits, text messages. I'll totally pay you back someday. You're amazing for covering this. 6 months of documentation, because this wasn't my first renovation. This wasn't my first contract. I knew how ownership worked. I knew what gifts were and what improvements weren't. That night, I didn't sleep much. I made lists, calls, plans. The next morning, his location popped up. Still shared. Brunch. Laughing. Mimosas. Celebration, apparently. I showed up at the apartment with 3 guys from my crew. No yelling, no confrontation, just work. We moved efficiently, professionally, like any other job. Appliances came out first. Cabinets next. Every custom piece I'd built with my own hands. Countertops carefully removed. Sinks, faucets, the toilet, the vanity, the rainfall shower, flooring. Every plank lifted to reveal the old, cracked linoleum underneath. We brought back the original appliances from storage, the avocado green ones, the ones he'd lived with just fine before I showed up. By the time we were done, the apartment looked exactly like it had when I first walked into it, maybe worse. One of the guys glanced around, uneasy. Boss, this is brutal. I thought of the smirk. He's not keeping what he didn't pay for, I said. I left a note on the old counter. Came to collect my property. Everything I purchased and installed has been removed. The apartment is back to its original condition. Good luck focusing on yourself. I signed my name, left the key, walked out. By late afternoon, my garage was full of cabinets and appliances. My phone was blowing up. I didn't answer, because for the first time since I met him, I wasn't reacting. I was responding. The messages started before midnight. Unknown numbers, blocked IDs, missed calls stacking on top of each other until my phone felt heavier just sitting on the table. I didn't answer any of them. I knew better than to engage while emotions were still raw. Silence, in moments like this, isn't avoidance. It's control. By morning, the tone shifted. The first voicemail was him again. His voice was tight, anger carefully wrapped in legal-sounding words he clearly didn't understand. Accusations, threats, a demand that I fix this. I deleted it halfway through. Then came the texts, from friends of his I barely knew. You went too far. This is cruel. You can't leave someone without basic living conditions. I didn't respond, because every single one of them ignored the same fact. He had lived there just fine before I ever touched a wall, before I spent $1, before he decided my work was something he was entitled to keep after discarding me. By mid-afternoon, his mother called. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice came through strained, emotional, the sound of someone who had already chosen a side. My son trusted you, she said. He loved you, and now you're punishing him for being honest about his feelings. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Your son used me as a free contractor for 6 months, I said evenly, then dumped me the day after I finished. He thanked me for the value boost. That's not how he meant it, she insisted. You're taking it too literally. I'm taking my property back, I replied. That's all. He needs those things to live, she said. The apartment is uninhabitable. It was habitable before I renovated it, I said. The original appliances are there. They work. He lived with them before. Her voice hardened. You're being cruel. No, I said, I'm being logical. She hung up. That night, his lawyer tried to call mine. My lawyer, my cousin, who specializes in property law, listened to the voicemail and laughed. They're claiming vandalism, she said, and theft of fixtures that allegedly became part of the property. I sent her everything. Receipts, permits, photos of me installing every item, text messages where he explicitly stated he wasn't paying for anything and would pay me back someday. Within hours, she sent their lawyer a response so thorough it left nothing to argue. Then, silence. For 2 days. On the third day, his best friend showed up at my workplace. Security called first. I agreed to meet him in the lobby. He didn't waste time. You need to fix this, he said. He's living in a construction zone. I left him with what was there before, I replied. That's not livable. It was 18 months ago, I said. Funny how it worked then. He stepped closer. You know he can't afford to fix it. I met his eyes. Not my circus, not my monkeys. You're at least giving back the appliances, he insisted. The toilet. Basic human decency. Basic human decency, I said calmly, would have been not using me for 6 months and smirking about a value boost. He called me pathetic. I called security. They escorted him out. That evening, the landlord called. He sounded almost amused. He's claiming you destroyed his apartment, the landlord said. I removed everything I installed and paid for, I replied. Returned it to original condition. Yeah, he said. I've got the paperwork showing you did all the work at your expense. He wants me to make you put it back, the landlord added. Not happening. He's got 2 months left on the lease. I'm not renewing. I paused. You're not? Nope. As soon as he's out, I'm renovating myself and raising the rent. $800 more a month. I exhaled slowly. Honestly, the landlord continued, he showed me how much value the unit really has, also billing him for reinstalling the original appliances. Apparently he'd complained they didn't work. They work fine, the landlord said. He's just used to that Viking range you put in. A few days later, my ex tried a different tactic. He showed up at my place with another woman. She stood close to him, well put together, uncomfortable, the kind of confidence that looks borrowed. The moment I opened the door, I saw confusion flash across her face. This the woman? I asked him. He didn't answer. She spoke instead. What you did was messed up. You can't just leave someone without basic living conditions. I looked at her calmly. You were seeing him while I was renovating his apartment, I said. Correct? She hesitated. It's not like that. Were you there? I asked, when I installed the sink, the cabinets, the flooring? Silence. I turned to him. So yeah, you were with her while I worked nights and weekends on your place. He didn't cheat, she said quickly. Then why didn't he tell me about you? I asked. She looked at him. He said nothing. He cheated, I said evenly, used me, threw me away. These are the consequences. His voice cracked. I need the appliances back. Please, I'll pay you over time. No, I can't cook. I can't shower. You lived there before I renovated it, I replied. You should have thought about that before the value boost comment. I was joking. It didn't sound like one. The woman stepped forward. Just be reasonable. Give him the basics. Stove, fridge, toilet. Where was his reasonableness, I asked, while he let me spend $47,000 and 6 months of my life while he was seeing you? She went quiet. They left angry, threatening, promising consequences. Later, the truth surfaced anyway. The woman wasn't just seeing him. She was also involved with another man at the same time. Apparently, overlapping relationships were just part of his pattern. I documented everything, because by then, this wasn't just about a breakup. It was about entitlement collapsing under reality. And the noise was only getting louder. The silence afterward was louder than the chaos. Once the calls slowed, once the threats turned into gaps of nothing, I was left alone with the weight of it all. Not the work, not the money, the realization. I had built something for a man who never intended to build with me. That truth settled slowly, heavy in my chest. Nights stretched long. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I had dismissed as stress or miscommunication. The way he never asked how much things cost. The way he smiled when friends praised him. The way he'd gone quiet whenever I mentioned the future. I hadn't just been naive. I had been convenient. The worst part wasn't losing him. It was understanding that I never really had him to begin with. I walked through my garage one evening, running my fingers along the cabinets stacked against the wall. My work, my craftsmanship, tangible proof of 6 months of effort. Normally, this would have grounded me, reminded me of my competence, my value. Instead, it felt hollow, because those cabinets weren't just wood and hardware. They were nights I skipped dinner, weekends I canceled plans, muscles pushed past exhaustion because I believed in a future that didn't exist. I sat on the concrete floor and finally let myself breathe it in. The betrayal didn't scream, it whispered. You were never the priority, you were the upgrade. My phone buzzed again. An email this time, a throwaway address. I'm sorry I messed up, I hurt you, but you're ruining my life. I read it once, then again. He wrote about drowning in debt, about not being able to find another place, about his mother being sick with stress, about how the woman he'd been seeing was pulling away, about how everything was falling apart. Please, he wrote, just give me the appliances back. I'll pay you. I promise. I just need help. My chest tightened, not with sympathy, but with recognition. This was familiar. Deflection. Minimization. Emotional leverage. If he could make himself the victim, maybe I'd soften. Maybe I'd step back into the role he'd assigned me. Fixer, provider, absorber of consequences. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Then I blocked the address. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't revenge. If it were revenge, I'd be obsessed. Checking his social media, waiting for updates, hoping to see him fail. I wasn't doing that. I was exhausted. I was grieving. Not the relationship, but the version of myself who believed love meant overextending until there was nothing left. I remembered the smirk again, the exact angle of it, the way his eyes had flicked to the countertops like numbers on a spreadsheet. Thanks for the value boost. That wasn't said in anger. It was said in truth. And that truth rewired something in me. I stopped questioning myself, stopped wondering if I'd gone too far, stopped replaying conversations to see where I could have been better. Better would have meant letting him walk away with my labor, my money, and my dignity intact. Better would have meant staying quiet. I wasn't willing to do that anymore. Still, the nights were hard. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, wanting to tell him something mundane, a reflex built over months. Muscle memory of intimacy. Then I'd remember, and the absence would sting, sharp and brief. I let it pass. I learned that healing doesn't always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like standing alone in the aftermath, resisting the urge to clean up someone else's mess one last time. This was my dark moment, not because I doubted my decision, but because I finally understood its cost. Loving him had cost me time, money, trust. Leaving him cost me illusion. An illusion, once gone, doesn't come back. But in its place was something quieter, stronger. Self-respect. And even in the dark, I could feel it forming. Steady, unyielding, like a foundation finally set on solid ground. The turning point didn't arrive with a victory. It arrived with paperwork. A week after the email, the police knocked on my door. 2 officers, neutral expressions, calm voices. My ex had filed a report claiming I broke into his apartment and stole property. I didn't feel panic. I felt prepared. I invited them in, sat at the table, and laid everything out. Receipts stacked neatly, permits with my name on them, photos of me installing every fixture, text messages where he acknowledged I was paying for everything and said he'd reimburse me someday. One officer flipped through the documents slowly. The other leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowing, not at me. "This is a civil matter," the younger one finally said. "You had permission to be there. You had a key. You have proof the items belong to you." The older officer shook his head. "Filing a report like this is wasting police time." They left without another word. I filed my own report afterward for the false claim. Paper trail, boundaries in ink. That same afternoon, his lawyer sent a demand letter. $47,000 for stolen renovations, $5,000 for emotional distress, $3,000 for temporary housing because the apartment was uninhabitable. My lawyer laughed when she read it. "This is intimidation," she said. "They're hoping you'll panic and settle." We didn't. We sent back copies of everything. Again, receipts, permits, photos, messages, added a note reminding them that false police reports are illegal and that continued harassment would result in a countersuit for legal fees. Silence followed for a full week. During that week, something shifted in me. I stopped bracing for the next hit. I stopped scanning my phone for threats. Instead, I focused on what was right in front of me. The cabinets in my garage, the appliances still wrapped, the work I had done, work that was mine. I called a friend who flips houses, told him what I had. "Always," he said. "Custom cabinets, quartz counters, designer fixtures, basically new? I'll take everything." "What's the catch?" he asked. "No catch," I said. "Project that didn't pan out." He paid me $32,000. Not the full $47,000 I'd spent, but fair. Considering I'd used the materials for months. Considering peace of mind has value too. I watched the truck, his, not mine, pull away with my work inside it, and for the first time since the breakup, I felt lighter. Not triumphant. Clear. That night, mutual friends started texting. Apparently, my ex had been telling people I was financially abusing him, that I'd taken the toilet out of pure spite, that I'd left him without basic utilities. Some believed him, others didn't. A few who knew the truth shared screenshots, his posts thanking me for paying, his captions bragging about my upgraded apartment, timestamps lining up perfectly with when I was working late nights. He deleted his posts within hours. Screenshots don't disappear. His mother left another voicemail, crying this time, saying he admitted he'd messed up, asking if revenge was really worth it, asking me to be the bigger person. I didn't respond. Being the bigger person would have meant letting him rewrite reality. I wasn't willing to do that. The real turning point came quietly, late one evening, as I stood alone in my garage. The space where my work had been stacked was empty now. Clean. I realized something then, something simple but solid. I wasn't fighting him anymore. I was done explaining. Done justifying. Done hoping he'd understand. The truth was documented. The consequences were unfolding without my help, and I no longer needed his acknowledgement to validate my experience. For the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting to chaos. I was standing on my own ground. And nothing, not threats, not guilt, not noise, could move me from it. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It dripped. Slow, persistent, inescapable. It started with the landlord calling again, his voice this time less amused, more resigned. "He's withholding rent," the landlord said. "Claims the apartment is uninhabitable." I leaned back against the counter, listening. "It's in the exact condition it was when he moved in," I replied. "I know," the landlord said. "You documented that when you first showed him the unit. He's trying to break the lease." There was a pause. "Good news for me, though," he added. "Gives me grounds to start eviction." I didn't feel satisfaction, just inevitability. A few days later, mutual friends reached out with updates I hadn't asked for. He was telling anyone who'd listen that I was dangerous, unstable, that I'd broken in and vandalized his place, that people should be careful around me. The irony didn't escape me. He'd filed a false police report. The officers had shut it down immediately, but truth moves slower than rumors, and he was counting on that. The landlord wasn't. "He's telling other tenants you're a threat," the landlord said. "I figured you should know." I thanked him. Then he said something that made me pause. "And hey, if you ever want to do actual paid work on my properties, let me know. You do quality renovations." I smiled for the first time in days. A week later, the eviction notice went through. 30 days. He spiraled. Emails from throwaway accounts. Messages sent through mutual friends. One long apology that swung wildly between remorse and accusation. "I'm drowning. I lost the apartment. My relationship is falling apart. My mom is sick from the stress. You're ruining my life." I forwarded everything to my lawyer. She replied with one line, "Do not engage." Then came the demand letter, again. This time a compromise. $15,000 for shared investment in the relationship. My lawyer responded with a breakdown. $47,000 in materials and labor, paid entirely by me. Zero contribution from him. Screenshots showing he was seeing another woman during the renovations. Timestamps, captions, smiles. They dropped it immediately. Apparently, someone finally explained to him that burning money on legal threats doesn't create leverage when you have no standing. He was evicted, stopped paying rent entirely, claimed uninhabitability. The court sided with the landlord in about 15 minutes. I heard he moved in with the woman he'd been seeing. It lasted 6 weeks. Living together, apparently, revealed things he'd been able to hide before. Funny how relationships built on overlap don't have stable foundations. The last voicemail came from his mother. She was crying, begging. "My son has nowhere to go," she said. "He's back at home. Please, you used to love him." I listened to the message twice before calling her back. "I did," I said calmly, past tense. She started to argue. I ended the call, blocked the number. That was the moment I felt the chapter closing. Not with relief, not with triumph, but with certainty. The consequences weren't something I created. They were something he walked into. He used me as a resource, treated my time, money, and labor like tools he could discard when finished. He expected to keep the benefits without the partnership. That was the gamble. This was the outcome. I lost a few surface-level friends along the way, people who thought boundaries should be flexible when they inconvenienced someone else. Others stayed. Some said they respected what I did. One friend put it simply, "You showed what self-respect actually looks like." Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped being a doormat. Either way, the noise faded, and in its place was something steady, final, unmovable. 2 months after the toilet incident, the noise finally stopped. No more emails from throwaway accounts. No more legal threats dressed up as compromise. No more late-night voicemails laced with guilt and urgency. The silence this time wasn't temporary. It was finished. I stood in a different space then. A small investment property I'd just closed on. A fixer-upper, bare walls, old wiring, a bathroom that needed work. The kind of place that looked like possibility instead of obligation. This time, every nail I hammered went into something that was actually mine. The money I made selling the cabinets and appliances became the down payment. Not the full $47,000 I'd spent, but enough. Enough to move forward. Enough to remind myself that losses don't define you unless you let them. Friends asked if I regretted taking everything back. The toilet, the sink, the cabinets, all of it. I didn't. Regret would mean I believed I owed him something after the way he treated me. I didn't. What I owed myself was boundaries. People confuse self-respect with revenge. They think if you don't soften, if you don't be the bigger person, you're bitter. But bitterness obsesses, it plots, it wants the other person to hurt. That wasn't me. I didn't chase him. I didn't smear his name. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I simply stopped subsidizing someone who saw me as a resource instead of a partner. That distinction matters. He made our relationship transactional the moment he smirked and thanked me for the value boost. I just accepted the terms he set. Actions have consequences, not because someone enforces them, but because reality eventually does. He lost the apartment, lost the relationship, lost the story he was telling himself about who he was. I lost an illusion. And honestly, that was lighter to carry. What I gained surprised me more. Clarity, confidence, a deeper trust in my instincts. The reminder that generosity without boundaries isn't kindness, it's vulnerability to exploitation. I still believe in love. I still believe in building things with someone. But next time there will be contracts, conversations, shared responsibility, respect that shows up before the finish line. For now, I'm focusing on work that pays me, projects that belong to me, friends who didn't ask me to be smaller to keep the peace. Sometimes people ask if I went too far. I ask them something back. If someone uses your time, your money, and your heart, then discards you the moment they get what they want, how far is far enough? I didn't destroy anything. I reclaimed myself. And if there's a lesson in all of this, it's simple. Be careful who you build things for. Not everyone deserves access to your labor, your love, or your life. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been used, minimized, or made to feel guilty for setting boundaries, thank you for listening. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell your story. And if you want more slow burn, real-life drama like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the community. Because everyone has a story. And some lessons are built the hard way, so others don't have to.